I'm glad to have Anurag, Richa, and Binali with us today. In terms of the format, I'm going to be moderating this panel. My name is Satyam. Probably you guys know by now, but if you don't, then my name is Satyam. I'm the founder of Arthan, and we will be talking about corporate social responsibility and the future of work and the relationship between the two. Uh, with that, I would like to begin with Richa. Richa, uh, all of us have gone through various surprises in the last 12 months. Most of us were never prepared for those surprises, which I think the pandemic has thrown at us. Also, there are enough learnings for all of us in the sector, within CSR and beyond CSR. But I wanted to just understand from your perspective, what exactly the CSR role you played in the context of COVID-19, and if you can give some of the examples from your work.
Sure, Satyam. First of all, thank you, Satyam and Team Arthan, for inviting me and sharing a bit of my experience in the CSR and sustainability space. COVID has been a really testing time for all of us, and we all know, as CSR professionals as well as development sector professionals, all of us it's been a tough time. And I think that this is a time when you kind of think, really out of box, and your creativity has to show, so that you can leave a legacy for tomorrow. And that's the true test of us, of the CSR and the corporates now. So whether it is right now COVID times, or if you talk about demonetization, both of the situations have been a contrarian situations. At L&T Finance, what we try to do is how to find out these can be turned into an opportunity. Now, just to give an example, during demonetization, we saw that there was a lot of distress in the communities, especially the rural communities. Now and can we kind of look at now alignment of this particular situation to our business areas? So as a non-banking finance corporation, we've been expanding in terms of retail lending, especially in rural areas. Now, when we saw the distress in the communities and the women entrepreneurs, their rural women entrepreneurs, because that's our core consumer segment when it comes to microfinance business, we thought that why not create a program within the CSR space that can help us in promoting digital financial literacy. Of course, which also needs to have a livelihood component. One thing which is critical is just promoting digital financial literacy will not help. So we kind of created a program that can fit into a situation which from a long-term perspective is aligned to business and can also support business. At the same time, we can also look at building on livelihoods and giving access to credit to the bottom of pyramid communities. So the objective, Satyam, was to kind of how to create programs that are a win-win situation, because in these contrarian situations or a black swan event like a COVID, can we, maximize on delivering from a social impact space point of view also, and yet keep the management mindshare in. Because see, my sole point is, if you don't have programs that are connected to business value chain, then at this point of time, when you have situations which are tough, the first thing that gets cut is the CSR budget, because that's and we've seen, I have so many of my peers talking about it, and when it's solely philanthropic, and what happens is that there is a certain fund comes in, and then you are told to contribute, and then most of your budget gets cut, and you are not able to sustain the current programs. However, like I mentioned, the Digital Sakhi program that we conceptualized during demonetization phase, it continues to be there, and in fact, we're looking at scaling it up. So, because it has the management mindshare, the entire program called Digital Sakhi, which is aiming towards digital financial inclusion and promoting digital financial literacy, it's connected to our business value chain of microfinance, and it's a long-term program. We convinced our management that if you really want to look at from a social impact point of view as well as business impact, you need to stay invested for 3 to 5 years. And despite the situations such as COVID, they ultimately know that the benefit which is going to get, rather I would like to share, in the COVID space, digital finance has really boomed. Our digital Sakhis have been getting queries that how can we actually promote, how can we do more of UPI payments, how can we do more of wallet payments. So it has actually hit us in a very strong manner. So my thing is that, you create programs and these are the such situation where, you have to think out of box and create programs. And at the same time, also support your NGO partners so that they understand the value of it and not just merely think from a philanthropic point of view.
So this is very helpful. I think one of the key insights for me, Richa, is the connection with the business value chain. And I would say it's fairly strategic, and that's where strategic CSR kicks in. Because if it's not connected with the business value chain, the possibility when the resource crunch happens, the possibility of not sustaining the program is there. And I also like the fact that how L&T Finance particularly looked the digital Sakhi program not only just empowers the women, but also like, in this era where everything is digital and digital transaction has boomed, as you rightly said, it's also creating enough economic opportunities for the women in the rural India and across the country. So it's very incredible to think about it. And I'm sure that there was a lot of thinking which went even in the pre-pandemic era to design programs from a long-term perspective and not just look at it from an annual cycle, because anything that is designed for a horizon of 3 to 5 years will actually get sustained in some manner or the other over a period of time. With that, I would like to come to Anurag. Anurag, I mean, picking up the same concept of business value chain integrated with the work Cisco has been doing. And I know that, we have talked about it at length around the Cisco Academy and the partnerships that have been formed with various different state governments. But if you can throw a light on like the Academy and the work that has happened in the COVID era in the last 12 months from Cisco's first lens.
Yeah, sure, Satyam. So I completely agree with Richa that obviously CSR and business, you can't look at both the things from different lenses, and both these things are very well interconnected. So again, pre-COVID era, while entire sector was changing perceptions about CSR, that we can think long term, we can think strategic, right? Exactly when COVID hit us hard, and all the long-term programs, they converted into short-term, and short-term were kind of broken down into ultra short-term. So because all the programs where you don't have the digital component, they took a major hit, and this was an unheard, unseen situation for the entire sector, not just limited to CSR. So we all realize that there is dearth of grassroots NGOs, there is dearth of professionals in CSR who understand the groundwork, who understand the beneficiaries, who understand rural India, and we all realize that why it's really important to have people in CSR team who understand that part of the world, the non-profit world. You need to have people in the team who can speak, who can understand regional languages, who can speak Hindi, right? So we need more people who knows Hindi, who can speak regional languages. So these are some experiences what we had during the COVID time, and we immediately, as I mentioned, most of our programs, they were kind of converted into ultra short-term programs, and we directly reached out to a lot of grassroots NGOs, a lot of organizations from SMEs who were dealing into sanitization, mask manufacturing, because initially it was still a rocket science how to tap into that market, right? Nowadays, every corner you can get masks and sanitizers, but that wasn't the case when COVID actually started in India. So our first effort was to kind of hold on everything and immediately start investing our money and kind of redirecting a lot of our money for the beneficiaries, for the COVID patients, and also for the majority of our field workers, beneficiaries. And then, as I mentioned, all the programs where digital component was not there, we were actually stuck. And that's when the only program which was very, very useful for us was one of our program with Tata Trust, where we were training a rural woman who knows how to operate mobile, how to do UPIs, payments, all of those. So we had trained around 10,000 women on rural entrepreneurship, right? And we kind of we converted that entire workforce and we realized that we have more than 10,000 feet on the ground, and we can actually leverage that entire workforce, the trained workforce, to sell off these masks, to create more awareness about COVID, to sell off the sanitizers in rural India. So the biggest learning for most of the CSR during this time is that just like what we see in investments, right, for your personal investments, you should have a balanced portfolio. You should have a diversified portfolio. Similarly, it's really important to have urban programs and rural programs, urban NGOs, urban non-profits, and also some rural non-profits like Sevas, right? So we started understanding the importance of all the grassroots NGOs, all the experienced ones, which were kind of lost in last 1 decade. So this was a major learning, and of course, one of our flagship program called Cisco Networking Academy. We added more than 100,000 students on that portal in last 5-6 months. That was massive, because all the educational institutions, they were shut down. They still not open up. Most of them are still shut down, and we knew that we cannot just miss this entire batch of engineers, right? We can't miss more than 5-6 lakh students sitting at home and just missing all their classes, right? So on this platform, we have multiple global courses and certifications, and we offer this to all our students free of cost. So it's a hardcore CSR program, and our in-kind value for one student beneficiary is more than $120. That's the per beneficiary costing which we incur for this program. So we added more than 100,000 students in last 5-6 months, and the number is just adding up. So we are looking forward to add at least 500,000 or 600,000 students by next financial year. So having said that, this is what blessing in disguise, and we are trying to fill up that digital divide, which is really it's a very practical thing which we saw that only throwing this digital program, throwing this financial literacy programs is not going to work. We really need to build that digital infrastructure first. We need to create that ecosystem which can understand the importance of digital programs first. Then only these things will work. So we are now, looks like we are back to zero, and we are really trying to build few fundamental things even in CSR.
Great to hear, Anurag, particularly, I mean, your analogy of personal finance being replicated in terms of portfolio. But I think with that analogy, you also laid upon the importance of working with the grassroots NGO, and not just working with the grassroots NGOs to have a balanced portfolio of NGO partners, but also the fact that you also need people in your team who will understand the grassroots work. And I think that pandemic has shown us that clearly the grassroots NGOs who might not be able to make the best pitches and the best presentation when it comes to the management concepts, but they have the maximum presence and maximum foot soldiers, if you wanna may call them. And I think those were the people who are connected to the community the most, and one needs to understand how you can work with them more closely.
Yeah.
I saw similarities in your approach with Richard's initiative, where you guys also trained women on entrepreneurship, and they were also doing UPI transactions beyond the academy. And academy, I think EdTech has been booming, so probably everyone knows by now that EdTech is the next big industry, whether you treat it from a for-profit endeavor lens or you treat it from a not-for-profit endeavor lens. Yeah. But I guess it's one of those phenomena where only good can come out of it. Like if we think about education technology in today's day and age, and especially with Cisco, bridging this digital gap, because we know in this country somehow we don't have as much literacy as we are certainly getting digital literacy, which is, everyone knows how to use WhatsApp and everyone knows probably how to now you do UPI transactions. They might not be able to fill a form to avail social services, but digital literacy moves way faster than other forms of literacy. Thank you, Anurag. With that, I mean, Benali, I would love to understand, Benali, what you have been seeing at the ecosystem level, specifically in light of the CSR work. AVPN works with many companies, and not just in India, across Asia, across the world. What are some of the examples you have noticed from the AVPN partners, which has been successful, or what has been some of the key learnings for you as an individual or for AVPN during the pandemic era in the context of CSR?
Sure. Thank you so much, Satyam. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting AVPN and it's an opportunity really to engage with Arthur and with my colleague panelists as well, and to the rest of the participants. So thank you so much for listening. The first thing that I would want to state, and I would want to take this opportunity to really talk about EVPN, which I represent, because I'm not very sure about whether the participants know which organization I'm representing, so that they understand the context that I bring in. So EVPN is a unique funders network, and I usually call it the powerhouse of collective knowledge of the social sector, social investing actions, effective deployment of capital, whether it's financial, intellectual, or human. We are basically a network which encompasses corporates, financial institutions, trusted foundations, family offices, impact funds, policy makers, all who belong to the sector and are interested to grow the social sector at large. As a part of the session today, I think I would definitely want to say that I sit in the middle. And what does that really mean is that on one hand, while I voice bring in the voice of the funding community whom I represent as AVPN, but I think I also represent the not-for-profits and the social enterprises who are the prime partners to our funder members as well. With regards to COVID, now since we are not into a direct delivery or direct implementation of programs or supporting programs directly, as Richa and Anurag are thinking through on, I think our experience has been very different from an ecosystem builder's perspective. That as soon as I think I want to reflect back and go back to March 20, I know none of us want to go back, but it's reflecting on that and just seeing what was the situation then. And probably what we really came across was all of a sudden a need in the country, which Anurag voiced out, the lacuna of many requirements. When we see any kind of I would say disaster setting in, there are some immediate requirements, and none of us are prepared to meet them. So we really saw that there was too much of a hue and cry about certain things which were an immediate requirement. So for example, just citing an example of a PPE kit, there were not many PPE kits in the country, and there were not many test kits for all the more reasons. I think where as an ecosystem we came together and we brought all the actions together, and this is exactly where we were sort of mapping in on one hand the requirements that existed in the country. Yes, Satya.
Sorry, Binali, your voice is breaking. I don't know whether it's breaking for you, Anurag, Richa too, or just breaking for me. I just wanted to confirm.
Is this better now?
Yeah, it's sounding distant, a bit distant. If you come closer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this better now?
Or Binali, you're talking too fast for the online forum.
You don't know. I do that usually. So there's so much of information within me, and I just want to part away. So okay, I'll try to be a little slow. Satyam, sorry about
Thank you
that.
so much.
Sorry, participants, about that. Please stop me if I'm going really fast. I think it was the requirement in country, Satyam, and the biggest requirement that we came at that point in time around was while we were mapping a number of requirements from, and this was voices, not only from the policymakers, because I even very thickly involved with the war rooms, the state war rooms, which were set up at each and every state, which were managing the requirements and mapping in the requirements of the states. So EVPN was very clearly working with the policymakers, because at some point in time, we wanted to understand what the requirement at the policy level was. And this was a connection that we had developed to the likes of the Niti Aayog, where there was a huge requirement of test kits in the country. And we could actually come with a solution in country. There was a huge requirement. And this is where I think the ecosystem of EVPN really came around. And not only from within India, but I think from our partners based in different markets like Singapore and Indonesia, in spite of the fact that they were grappling with the COVID situation themselves, they sort of transported and exported a lot of test kits in country. And I think because all the commercial flights were the only ones that were operating, we were in a position to drive in all of that support in country. Then we could have our in-house solutions. So we saw the ecosystem coming in together, the gap which we normally see between the private sector and the policy world. I think all shackles were broken. We could see the entire ecosystem walking hand where is that we could find a solution to that. So we pulled in a number of our corporate partners, a number of our other partners who had an access to technology, and how could they provide a lot of tech support to the communities who probably were not tech friendly. So through our education platform, we pulled in all of the intelligence together, all of the knowledge together. And this was very early in the COVID days, Satyam, because the country did not have a solution. Today, I think when I reflect back what we were in March and April, vis-a-vis what we are today in November and December, I think we've got many solutions ourselves. So what we really saw is the silos getting broken, people trying to take the responsibility together, whether I'm a corporate of any size, whether I'm a trust in a foundation or in a family office, together in the scheme of things. So this is how we could drive it together, not only things from within India, but I think cross boundaries.
Thank you, Binali. I mean, I guess this answers is in the spirit of AVP and ecosystem role, which is like, how do you bring in multiple corporate partners, and not just corporate partners, how do you bring in partners to solve for a common problem at scale and at the policy level? And good to hear about the policy role that, AVP and you have been playing, particularly during this era. And I'm assuming those policies will shape a lot of future of CSR in the coming next few years. And I will come back to you to discuss that more towards the end of, in a bit, once I will circle back with like Anurag and Richa. So great. Thank you, Binali. With that, Richa, I would also like to, I mean, you've already touched upon this at the beginning, which is thinking strategically from a 2 to 3 year perspective. Now, COVID happened. I think by and large, everyone in the audience, everyone who has tuned in from every social media platform know and is aware that we are in an economic recession. I mean, I think it's fair to say we are in economic recession, and most of that recession will lead to like, funding crunch in the coming, like, next year or probably next couple of years. So my question to you is, what would be your advice would be to the development sector professionals, that how can they actually work with CSR or the private companies going forward, beyond looking at it from a funding support perspective? And if you talk about the next few years, Richa, because next financial year and probably by the time the economy will bounce back, we are looking at 2024. I mean, that's what our estimate says and what we have been reading.
Yeah. So, Satyam, I think, Anurag also touched a bit about it. I was just thinking, during these times, I mean, when we know that there is resource crunch and it's going to be like that for coming a few years, I see best fit in terms of corporates coming together and collaborating on it. For example, Anurag mentioned about building digital infrastructure. Now, that's something which will be of interest to us as well, because in our program, its primary focus is that, when you're looking at digital financial literacy, the infrastructure has to be there. Then why not look at an organization which is into, providing digital infrastructure? So you utilizing the strength of the organization also. So that's their expertise. Can we look at a collaboration and therefore sustain the program? So that's moving beyond the grants. That is utilizing your own core strength. Similarly, when it comes to, let's say, my previous organization also in Tata Communications, when I was there, what we were looking at is how can we look at, having skilled manpower for our suppliers, and therefore, building on our supply chain and keeping it open to industry. As you know, that CSR law doesn't allow that you need to, you have to promote for your own company in terms of, getting manpower or any business benefit, direct business benefit. But overall, as a telecom industry, can you provide a skilled manpower from let's say, a bottom of pyramid section, and then provide them in the employment opportunities? At that point of time, can you involve your employees as strength to develop module also? Similarly, at L&T Finance also, we have utilized, being a financial institution, we have utilized the strength of our microfinance team and our learning and development team to develop this kind of module, which can be shared with our business also and with our NGO partners also. And we've kept it open. So our entire financial literacy module, one of our partners is Seva Bharat, and they can share it with their other corporates also, because it's all about, imparting financial literacy. So that's something, utilizing your own strength besides the grants to help NGO partners for further adding value to their other projects also is something which we can look at. Second thing is in terms of volunteering, now that's something, in fact, virtual volunteering has become, I'm sure a lot of other corporates are also going ahead, and we've also been doing it. There we can utilize again the skill of our employees for not-for-profit partners. I remember in Tata's, we had, from a long-term perspective, we had created a program where, employees would actually go to grassroots for 6 months and build capabilities in terms of, let's say IT strengths, or developing human resource systems, financial capabilities, or even, things like basic things like how to manage an MIS and stuff like that. Even at L&T Financial Services, we have an annual capacity building program. What we try to do is we take our legal team there and explain our NGO partners what are the contracts, within the contracts, what are the different subsections, what does it mean to that. Similarly, we take our marketing and social media team. Why is it important to sell your cause? Why it is important to market your cause? It is important. See, you spoke about initially, Satyam, making presentations and all, but if you're coming to a corporate, I mean, that's how it has been working. You have to have one, a powerful storytelling has to be there, and those presentations also matter at a management level. So I think these are some things we can build capabilities on. Of late, we've been, strongly communicating to our NGO partners that you must talk about it. Use social media. I mean, you all have been using, Arthan has been using, so many, all of us use social media for maximizing brand visibility. Why not NGO partners also? But you have to continuously on a daily basis almost. So CSR teams have to be ready, and including CSR and marketing teams, because there are stakeholders that, build capacities of our NGO partners so that they talk about the cause, and therefore it benefits your project also. So we have to see from a very holistic angle that, and not just think, no, this is my bucket only and I will do only this much. No, that doesn't work. You have to build capabilities, and as CSR, we can only do limited stuff, but and we need to recognize that NGO partners are equal partners because they do the work, and that's how they need to show it. And you need to kind of build their capacity so they can show it, and therefore your program also gets that kind of visibility. So it's a win-win situation. So I would suggest that these 3-4 things in terms of giving volunteers expertise, utilizing your own business expertise for NGO partners, building collaborative models between 2-3 corporates and a civil society organization. I think these are the ways where corporates can contribute beyond this grant mechanism. In fact, just to visualize, I can easily see a collaboration. If I have to see in this particular piece, maybe a Godrej Agrovet, which is into agri-allied space, maybe a Cisco, maybe a financial institution like L&T Financial Services, and a large civil society organization like a Seva Bharat. I'm just thinking out loud, because I can actually see why can't we work on a within the rural space for building digital financial capabilities for rural women entrepreneurs. Just to kind of think out loud. These are, I think, ways to kind of move ahead. Wherever there is resource crunch, and possibly an ABPN or a multilateral bilateral funding organization coming from a policy perspective, because it's important to communicate your grassroots learning to government. We've been trying to come out with white papers every year, but if you have a collaborative framework, you share your grassroots experience with the government, I think that's where a larger purpose gets served, and you're able to create a sustainable social impact.
Thank you so much, Richa. This is very, very, very inspiring, and I love how you have created a platform. And I'm sure Binali is already getting excited about this collaborative that has been formed in this panel discussion, which can be pitched now to any ministry, saying how these corporates have to work together to make digital literacy, take the digital literacy mission forward. And Binali, I would like to bring you back in just to respond to what Richa said, like, what role an ABPN can do if a collaborative like this has to be set up?
We are very much open to get on board, as you rightly said, Richa. We're hungry for more, because I think as ABPN, our job is to pool in the right kind of ecosystem builders together, irrespective of the geography that they come in from, irrespective of the sector that they represent. So I think we're all about breaking silos. Happy to bring the effort that you've already put in, and if you're able to put that in front of the right kind of policymakers and bring it to the next logical level, we'll be more than happy to join hands.
Thank you, Binali. So now Richa, you know who you need to connect with immediately after this panel discussion. Let's hold her accountable for this. Okay, with that, I mean, I would love to, Richa touched upon a lot of capability building aspects, Anurag, and she also touched upon like looking at how the NGOs and the corporates can work together beyond looking at the funding relationship. which I think is which we all I think agree with that is very, very critical in the post-pandemic era. And I think it's critical from a mental model then, for me personally. Like, why do you need to always think that funding is a means to an end? Yes, it's important, but there are also other levers that are equally important. Like, how AVPN can give you access to a network and to policymakers, to like, how Cisco digital tools can be applied, even if you're not funding a not-for-profit. Would you like to shed some light, Anurag, from your lens? I mean, how the next 2-3 years would look like? Assuming that we are not going to be in the similar kind of funding environment as we were in, at least for a while.
Yeah, sure. So I think Richa touched upon all the critical and important points, and I'll just try to add to what Richa said already. So I mean, since the audiences are non-profits, so they all know that most of the CSRs, the volunteering and CSR teams, they work as different teams, right? There are 2 separate teams in most of the CSRs, right? But due to this resources crunch these days, and also we saw that the volunteering team in Cisco, I mean, we literally leverage that entire workforce in reaching out to a lot of tier 2, tier 3 cities where they were working from home, right? So we don't have that resource heavy team at Cisco, but we literally leverage that workforce. Similarly, it's really important for next 2-3 years to work, and I know that most of the corporates have already started working in that fashion, that volunteering and CSR teams are now working as one team. So even for external audiences, they will be seen as one team. So guys, wherever you are working with any existing CSR funders, do reach out to their volunteering team. It's really, really critical, because if you are not in a position to receive grant, at least you will get a lot of mentoring, a lot of other retail fundings or volunteering work from that team. So that's one. Second is, of course, the profitability, revenues has shrunk for most of the companies in India. So in case earlier you were working with, let's say, 5 CSR funders, now you need to reach out to 10 or 20 CSR funders, right? So you need to come out and you need to go where the money is. So you really need to work upon your communication, your pitching, and there are a lot of organizations these days who are coming forward to build your capacity, build your team's capacity in making those creatives, making those pitches. Organizations like AVPN, they have this deal tool. Sorry, Binali, I forgot the tool's name, but there's a deal breaker or something.
The deal share.
Deal maker.
Deal share.
Deal share.
Let's call it deal maker now.
So leverage those kind of tools, leverage these kind of networks, reach out to these kind of organizations, because where now the opportunities are less, so you need to really put a lot of effort now. And I know that most of the corporates, we keep talking about partnerships, collaboration, but due to some reasons, it's really difficult to make those collaborations, and it's more difficult to have 2 big corporates or 3 big corporates to come forward and do a collaboration. It's difficult to have 2 big elephants in one room, and there Binali did that by bringing Cisco and Tata Trust for one of this flagship program I was talking about, right? So having said that, while 2 corporates are working to come together, what I have seen that non-profits are making an active play there, right? Non-profits can do that job much better. That if you are working with 2 corporates, create a pitch and you connect those 2 corporates with a third corporate, third partner. And I have seen many instances that if non-profits are taking that lead, we are really seeing those partnerships, and corporates who are relatively working on different kind of work, who are from different sectors, they're also coming together and making this collaboratives. So that's my one recommendation, that you need to play that active role of bringing these corporates together.
So, I think touched upon a very relevant point, Anurag, because coming together of corporates, and we've seen that it is not easy. You need an organization that can manage both the large set of corporates, because things like basic stuff like brand visibility, and whose geography is going to be the. I'm really being candid because this happens on a basis. So that an organization needs to be there that can manage both the corporates together and yet be able to convince them that it's going to be a win-win for both and larger, mostly for the beneficiary point of view. So that's, I think, there is a clear-cut opportunity for organizations. I don't know, I mean, there has to, because it is difficult to get 2-3 large corporates together to work on a common cause. So yeah, that's the only bit I wanted to share. Yeah.
I think I don't even have to ask the question to Binali, because Binali probably knows what she has to do between Cisco and L&T Finance right now, along with ABPN. But on that note, Binali, I would love to hear what do you think? Pretty much saying what could be the future of CSR. Anurag and Richa are both pointing towards collaboration, which is ABPN's strength, bringing diverse set of partners. Also being aware of the fact that it's not easy to collaborate. It's very easy to talk about it, but it's very difficult to implement. So, I mean, what are some of your blueprints for successful future of CSR in terms of collaborative CSR? We have talked about collaborative philanthropy a lot in the past. There are certain examples, but fairly outlier kind of examples. It's still not the most common thing. So how would the future of CSR look like, also from policy perspective, since you're part of the committee?
Sure. I think so. I've heard Anurag, I've heard Richa, and like both of them, the kind of partnerships that we have sort of been a reason for people to come together. I think it's not been easy, as Richa said. Yes, it's not been easy. It's been a journey ourselves, but I think it's fairly easier for organizations like us who are neutral in approach, who don't have probably an agenda for themselves. The way we are, the only agenda that we have is the simple agenda of bringing people together. And hence, we have seen as a very unbiased organizations toward a particular or any particular thematic or geography where we try to bind people together. Being a neutral voice always helps. And absolutely point well taken, Richa, and as you rightly said, you need someone whose job is just to bring together people together. You have your set of things to do. So just citing 2 examples or probably 3 examples of the current people whom I can see on the screen is Satyam from Arthan and Richa from L&T and Anurag from Cisco. Now, if I have to bring 3 of you together, it's easier for me because I don't have any other agenda, but the only agenda is to bring all of you together. And so I don't know. I mean, I would rather say that I've seen that happening in a great fashion, and we have examples of success during COVID. A lot of collaborators have been formed of different sizes, different forms, different agendas. People with who exist in different geographies have probably never met ever before, but still happened because the agenda or probably the goalpost was the same. Everyone wanted to reach a common goalpost, and all they needed is someone to draw that journey for them, that pathway for them, and it was ABPN's task to put it together. I think while one way we're looking at pooling in all of these resources together, where it's a funded group of people coming together, on the other thing, we also have the funded NGO Connect. And that's exactly what Anurag was referring to is the deal share, which we have. And you're now wanting to christen that to deal match. So happy to do that, Satyam. But the whole essence of that program is that on one hand, we have listed a number of NGOs who are vetted by our own member partners. So NGOs who are currently probably within the participants today. I would love to hear from you as ABPN if you have any projects where you are looking out for support, where you're looking out for support for your initiatives, your plans. Do reach out to us because we would love to have you onboarded, and we have a section called the Deal Share, and every project that you come up with, goes in a box of deals with us, and we have a particular segment, a very technology driven segment, where we try to hold those deals with us. And we also, because we are a funders network, there's a constant requirement from our funder groups who are looking out for viable projects to deploy their funds, their capital, and looking out for partners. It's very easy for us to do the connections thereafter. So please feel free to reach out, whether you're funders, whether you're any size of, I would say, funders, or even organizations at the receiving end. I would definitely want to say one more thing, Satyam, is that I think one thing that we feel, and as AVP, and we have witnessed during the times of COVID in the last 10 months, is that I call it a new relationship status. And this is an absolute new relationship status, which I think has come up during the times of COVID. And this is really human-centered rewiring. Whether it's the NGOs and the funders, probably a Cisco who was working with some partner in its earlier avatar has discovered something new. Probably a funder and a community, a funder, an NGO and the government. The NGOs, funders and their own teams, I think we've discovered each other much, much better in this situation. So there is a lot of human-centered rewiring of the relationships that has happened. The policymakers who normally super welcoming have been so open to look at the kind of partnerships that they could get from the NGO sector was considerably, and hats off to those NGO friends who have actually come around and handled the COVID situation. So I think this is scope for a lot of collaborations at every single level to take place, not only a funder, but a funded NGO and a lot of government also in between. So there is very much a possibility. AVPN is happy to pick up on that.
Thank you, Binali. Very, very excited to hear about all of that. And for everyone who's tuned in, do check out the platform AVPN has, where you can showcase your work. And being part of the AVPN community, you would get access to a larger network, which is not just restricted to India, but globally. So it'd be good to connect with, COVID has taught us the diversity really matters. I think a lot of people are talking about diversity and inclusion in way many definitions, but like we need to have as many diverse stakeholders as possible. Like Richa also mentioned that, you need to tell your story. You need to be able to tell it to very, very diverse stakeholders. And that's not just for the one corporate, but I think that's true for however you are going to tell your story using digital, using different mediums. And digital seems to be the only way for us for at least the next couple of months before Binali will invite us to Ahmedabad. She has been giving me at least a sense of something is going to happen in Ahmedabad. I can't probably talk about it right now. Whenever we are allowed to talk about it, we'll talk about that. But with that, I know we have very limited time left, but one thing I heard, and which is in context of future of work, and I think particularly I would like Anurag and Richa and Binali all to touch upon that. We know with this contraction of funding has also led to reduction in jobs. A lot of job losses have happened in corporate India, in the NGO world. Particularly in the NGO world, these job losses have not been talked about because we know the NGO sector is not as structured as the corporate sector is, where you see announcement of few thousand people being laid off. But the contraction estimates are at somewhere around 3 million odd people in the last 10 months who have lost jobs in the social impact sector. Now, I would still want to look at it from a positive element of filling the gaps, which is where Anurag, Richa, you both talked about volunteer opportunities and knowledge sharing. How can these volunteer opportunities be not just virtual volunteer opportunities be not just treated as one-off thing, but as something which people continue to do for the rest of their life while they're working in a large corporate? Richa, you want to go first? Anurag, you want to go? Anyone can go first. It's a common question for me.
Yeah. So, okay, so it definitely should not be a one-off thing. There has to be, like I mentioned, so you create a case out of it also when you're sharing within the management. Just to give you an example, I mean, we've not done it at L&T Finance, but I know of certain large organizations like HSBC and IBM, what they've been doing, and I think even the Tatas. So the entire piece is, when you have a performance evaluation system, and the employee who's been doing, really well, when and he or she gets a rating of 5 being the highest, one of the reward mechanism can be give him a sabbatical to give his expertise to an NGO sector. I think it is HSBC model where, and he gets a full paid, so it's not like, he's not getting paid for it. He's able to utilize his strengths, capacities of an NGO and can anything. If it's a human resource professional, you can build their HR systems. Like I mentioned, if it's an IT professional, you have to have rewards mechanism like that. It needs a long-term approach, a long-term kind of a vision of the corporate also, and it needs to have that kind of maturity to have these performance incentive for employees so that they can support building capacities of the NGO partners via volunteering. So there's an incentive both for employee also to stay invested for long. At the same time, the NGO also, because one-time volunteering will not build that kind of capabilities. Ek bari financial literacy ka session liya, it's not going to build anything. But if you stay on and every day you take a few sessions, you do a piece, post in a pre and post assessment, understand it, what further can be value add can be there, then only the impact can come. So these are some things, from a volunteering perspective, which is important. While you were talking about pay cuts, the job losses, I was just thinking, I was reading the other day an article in the Harvard Business Review. A good corporate, from a sustainability angle, should look at not, laying off people, but looking reducing at the salary cuts. That's a overall corporates. Why not look the similar manner in the NGO sector? Just have a, salary cuts instead of laying off people. You can, from leadership to a maybe not a grassroots level, but leadership to a management level, take maybe a 10% or a 20% cut, but not let people go off from your salary. So I think similar to corporate view, something maybe like that can be, something which not-for-profits can look at. And also, as you know, the FCRA law, there's a hit on the corpus of the NGOs also. I want to talk more from NGO because I know that in your audience, a lot of not-for-profit sector. So from that angle, I feel, again, coming back to grants, somewhere corporates, while making proposals, should also add in a bit of how they can build repository of the, organization grants for the not-for-profits also, rather than just program. So the entire bit, so that the NGOs can sustain themselves during the crisis and not, they should not let people go off from their payrolls and all. So that, and that it need not be very high. Obviously, project has to be a main component, but some part for the NGOs corpus also should be there. This is my development sector hat, not too much.
No, I love that hat. I think we should just we should ask you to specifically wear that hat often, because it seems like you're on the other side of the table advocating for it. We need a lot more. We need a lot more advocacy on that front too, because clearly it's a demand-supply mismatch happening with a lot more supply side looking for limited demand. But yes, what is your, Binali, what is your take on this? Also from a lens of like collective work, collective collaborative ecosystems, diverse stakeholders. Is this something ABPN has actually witnessed in bringing in people who to come and support, like collaborations or platforms, also as a volunteer? I'm moving beyond the whole NGO question, but looking at it from your perspective.
Yeah, so I think I have to see it from two sides. And as Richa said, the heart of or the hat that she's wearing, which is from not from the corporate side, but from where she's coming from. I think I would want to also see, because I would want to address this entire thing from both the corporate angle as well as from the NGO angle. Both the NGOs and the corporates are generators of jobs and generate livelihoods. But given the situation, they're holding the CSR only responsible for the job cuts or the layoffs. I think that's not right. I think we should be also holding the not-for-profits accountable, and as the action has to be from both the sides. And here is my take, if I really have to look into the funder community at large, and not, of course, repeating what Richard said, a little bit of additional ask with regards to a longer-term sustainability of asking for corpus. But I think from a giver's perspective and from a funder's perspective, I think I'm not even saying CSR, but I'm saying every funder should broaden their scope and openness to giving, and HR should be treated as the most vital element of anything and everything that we do, because usually there is a toughness that when any budgets are submitted, the human resource cost is always questioned. While they are the backbone, the brain, the arms of the project, I don't know why they're questioned so hard. But but they should be realistic in nature at the same time. But I think the funder world should acknowledge and should take into account that given the situation, the toughness of the jobs around, there should be broadening of their scopes. I think another thing which also the funders are looking into, at least within my network, are that where they were deploying bulk and multi-year funding, they are now looking at shorter duration, which can be extendable. And as a result, with the kind of funding that they have currently with them, they are able to adopt and extend their support to multiple projects rather than limiting it to one or two big projects. So they're also diversifying from across all sizes of organization, which is very wise because they know what the current budgets are. So instead of deploying all of that they have in one or two organizations, they're spreading themselves across different smaller organizations, so they really need it the most. Some of the CSR funders and some of other funders are also open to projects or strategies which leads to creation of more jobs. So I think for all the NGO partners there, think about the kind of proposals when you're sharing it out. Also talk about how does that lead to more employment generation. Please involve that and please think about that creatively. Another thing I think which is very important is that this COVID situation has certainly brought in a lot of connectivity between the humans and technology. I think the corporates should look at building on that, not seeing the replacement of technology, with the humans rather than seeing that as a collective force. But also, I think a few things for the NGOs here. While this is for the funders, I think they also need to be very realistic when they're, making an ask. Probably there was a cushion time, where they had one person for one task. I think let's park that for a while and probably look at multitasking. This is the time when one can extract one's team's hidden potential and probably reaching the organizational structure. And of course, the big thing which I always say, revisit your fundraising strategy. Every time, if you're thinking that, because there is a problem at the CSR and CSR is not able to really honor you with the kind of commitments they've done in the past, I think you can't blame the CSR, you need to blame yourself, because I think something is evidently wrong in your own strategy and you don't have a diversified funder base within your own organization strategy. I think we need to leave the CSR players and the corporates to make some money. We need to give them a break. They have been hit on their businesses. Give them some time to, reject their business, earn some more money, and probably the 2% will come out in full swing. So I think we need to give them a break till they make that money. The last thing, of course,
I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing, of course, I think in every forum where I have, been, speaking, I think one thing which is really gone not acknowledged is the HR part of our organization, Satyam, and whether it's the corporates, whether it's the NGOs. I think HR has played a superb role and a greater appreciation for the breadth what HR has done. Whether it's volunteering and whether putting in our teams at ease, they've played a fantastic role. We need to acknowledge their support for sure. That's what I would say at this point in time. Thanks.
Sorry, I got dropped off, which also happens with technology. I'm back. Anurag, you get exactly 60 seconds with your response now because we have very limited time. But I would love to know what you think with the original question. And though Binali has opened up the whole Pandora box of give corporate some time to earn more money and come back in, I think we need another session to discuss how that's going to look like. But I would still like to know what do you think about virtual volunteering and how can we continue to engage people working in corporate India in the social impact sector?
Yeah, sure, Satyam. So, and thanks, Binali, for that advice. I mean, I really liked it. So as I mentioned, we need to keep leveraging volunteering opportunities. And as Binali was mentioning that there are many places where NGOs are also kind of responsible for the disaster which happened in, by we need to let go of a huge number of people from the organizations. So what we did in Cisco is that from last 2-3 years, we were literally pushing all our nonprofits to allocate at least 5% of their total ask for capacity building of their employees. And we wanted them not to nominate only their senior leadership team or their co-founders for this capacity building program, but to kind of engage their program managers, project managers, to send them off to do some diploma course or to do any short-term course to IIMs or IITs, whatever, in order to do capacity building of those employees. So having said that, it's a long debatable topic, but we really need to invest our money for capacity building of our own people. We need to do optimization of a lot of costing. We need to relook into our ask, the kind of budgets we propose to the funders, because we have optimized some of the ask by even 50 to 60%, right? Without intervening the scope of their program, right? So we need to do a lot of these things, and for that we have engaged a lot of our senior leadership from Cisco, right from HR to finance to IT to engineering, and they have spent their time, in the tune of 1 to 2 months they have invested to kind of optimize the ask and the proposal of these organizations, and so much so that we have suggested some people to step down as CEO to as CTO, right? And literally after a year or so, they really thanked us that we took that decision, and we literally pushed them to step down. And there was a reason, there was a purpose why our senior leadership advised them to do that, and they followed that advice, and that literally did magic for them. So yeah, it's a long debatable topic. Maybe Satyam sometime.
Yes, I think I'm already with Binali. I'm going to conspire and set up like another discussion, because Binali is. I'm sure we are going to discuss this in February. Aarti, you are in the right platform. This is called transition in the online world. So I'm going to finish in 1 minute, and you guys can take over. This panel is ending now. But I don't think our discussion is over, because we clearly have the activist Richa with us right now, and I want that activist voice to go to as many people as possible. So we have to reconvene, and Binali is giving us a platform in the month of Feb. So I think we will come back again in the month of Feb at the AVPN conference to discuss this further.
Yes, please.
But it was great talking to all three of you. Thank you for extremely helpful.
Thank you so much.
I will
Enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so
see
much.
all hopefully in
Thank you.
person. Binali, remember that
Absolutely. All of you are welcome to join the AVPN gang. Most welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Binali. Thank you, Richa.
Thank you.
Anurag.